Hello and welcome to another history episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games and the game's history, this is the show for you. All year long, we are looking back at Cortina 1956 as it is the 70th anniversary of these games. I got a follow-up from alpine skiing last time we talked to alpine skiing.
As if
And
alpine skiing wasn't enough, now you've got more for me.
yes, so after we recorded, after I went downstairs and producer Ben was watching a James Bond movie, and it happened to be on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and it was exactly at the ski scene. And I looked at him and went, "Oh, that's Tony Saylor."
And he thought you were the smartest person he had ever met, and he was so
Well,
happy to have married you.
well, he always thinks that, right? But it was so bizarre to like talk about him being James Bond's stunt double and then
And then
see
seeing
that
it.
immediately. I also wanted to emphasize how big of a deal Tony Saylor is in Austria because I asked my friend Sabrina, who said, yes, Tony Saylor is a big deal, and then got a video of her father waxing poetic about Tony Saylor for quite some time.
Right, that he's the perfect age to have remembered this and
Exactly,
just thought that
exactly.
he was the biggest star at the time.
Right, and it's so amazing how one person can impact several generations in that way, because, like, we've been talking about Alyssa Liu and how a whole generation of kids just adores her, and she's just transcended, but I wonder how much this same generation, or even, like, the generation behind us, how much Dorothy Hamill impacts them,
Right,
you
right.
know,
Just that
because that's our
how many people
skater.
became skaters because of her.
Right, but it seems like Tony Saylor, because he got into acting and, singing, that he was able to, like, kinda transcend over time and make such an impact that way. It's so interesting. But today we're talking bobsled.
And bobsled back in the day is no joke and so much fun. I remember this even from when we did Chamonix. Just bobsled before, say, the 19 is the Wild West. So I'm so excited for this.
Yes, so it did change a lot from when you talked about it in Chamonix, and when you talked about it, like, all the crew members sat in the sled and they bobbed to get the sled moving, right? So, now we have sleds with curved holes over the front, and there are handles on the sides and back for the brake band and the other pushers to push. They're kind of like, they don't make tall walls. The sled is still open on the sides, but they've got these handles that stick up. They don't stick out the way they do now and then pop in. They're just kind of uprights. And most of the athletes in the sled are pretty much sitting upright the whole time still, you know. But you're starting to see a little bit of men ducking down in the back. But definitely not the driver leaning back as far as they can to be there. There's a little bit, but we're still in early days of aerodynamics in bobsled. So, Cortina 1956 was also the first Olympics that had a weight limit for the total crew and sled. So, prior to this, as you noticed, there were a lot of very heavy people in the sport because heavier sleds go down the hill faster. And at Oslo 1952, Germany swept the bobsled events, and in its four-man sled, team members weighed an average of 117 kilograms, which is 257.4 pounds.
Those are some big men in a little sled.
Right? So apparently Federation said enough.
Enough with the sausage.
Right, right. Maybe it was, I would love to see, like, what the chatter was. I don't think it makes huge news because it's bobsled, but I wonder if the chatter was like, "These people don't look like athletes and this is a sport." And that's not
Mm,
to say, and not to say that you can't be big and athletic, because definitely we see that in different sports. It's essential to be big in some sports, but I have a feeling like this is just being
big.
big and unhealthy in a way. The race was at the Pista del Bob, which had 16 curves. It was 1,700 meters long. That is 445 meters longer than the new track that got built for Milano Cortina 2026.
But not without not outside the realm of some other tracks. I mean, 1700 is not
Yeah,
outrageous from what
right,
we still see today.
right. I also had a big scoreboard and this really cool electric diagram of the track that was like had flashing lights all the way down. So they would flash as the sled went down the hill and you could see where it was on the track.
Nice.
Omega's electric timing was part of the event and it was automatic to a tenth of a second. There is an old newsreel on YouTube that just shows the end of the course, and there's no big house at the end that has the spectator stands that we see today. There's no foam pit that stops them.
They just
Just
hope for
kind
the
of keep
best.
going. Right, and they do have a brake man, they have brakes, but, like, they just kinda keep going, and in this YouTube video, there's a Swiss sled that actually hits a cameraman, and a cameraman has to be hauled off in a stretcher. And luckily, there were 4 stretchers on special sleds and 3 ambulances at the ready for accidents like these.
So they knew it was coming.
Yes. The weather, of
Bobsled's
course.
still one of the more dangerous
Yes.
of activities.
The weather, of course, was an issue. Snow was scarce. The run was icy, but organizers had to worry about a lot of wear and tear on the track. In the official report, there's a lot of praise for race chief Federico Terschak, who'd been involved in this track's development and maintenance for 20 years. We could do a whole story just on him from what I've read because he seems to be this big local legend in Cortina and in bobsled for that area. And in the run up to the games, he built up the curves of the track for better safety. And the official reports note that there weren't a ton of major crashes, although one of the US brakemen got hurt during a skid in one of the curves. He managed to hang on to the sled and finish the race, but he got some kind of leg injury out of the deal. But even with an expert maintaining the track, the weather was still challenging. In the U.S. Olympic Committee's United States 1956 Olympic book, the bobsled reports notes that drivers had to memorize the run because practice time was limited. If it was a clear day, the sun would start melting the ice at 9 a.m., and officials would be forced to shut down practice by 10 a.m. So, needless to say, weather was challenging. Two-man event came first, and the two-man going into the Olympics, it could have been anyone's game as the last 3 world championship drivers were not at Cortina. However, the 2 Italian teams, they had home track advantage, and they were the best drivers in the field. Italy also had a very distinctive sled designed by Podar that had a more aerodynamic look to it. And the report in the US Olympic book said that the weight had also may have been a factor. The Italians were lighter, so they did not make minimum weight, and they had to ride with 150 pounds of lead bars attached to the bottom of the sled. And the US said, quote, thus this lowered the center of gravity, allowed them to slam through the curves at a greater speed than any of the other contestants. Leading the field was driver Lamberto Dalla Costa. Dalla Costa was a sergeant major in the Italian Air Force and was recruited to pilot bobsleds. He was paired with Air Force Major Giacomo Conti, and they had great team chemistry. They were the fastest team for all 4 runs of the race. No question that they were winning. Finishing just over a second behind was hometown hero Eugenio Monti, also known as Il Rosso Volante, the flying redhead.
The early version of the flying tomato.
Right. So Monti had been a champion skier, but sustained career-ending knee injuries while training for Oslo 1952. And a couple of years later, despite never having done bobsled before, he and some friends decided to enter an amateur race. Monti was volunteered to drive, and he surprisingly won. And in doing so, he found a new sport. So he took up training for the games and teamed with Renzo Alvera, who started bobsledding in 1953. So we have some brand new bobsledders, but they quickly become the favorites. Renzo's brother, Michela, was in the 4-man bobsled at Oslo, 1952. So we've got some all in the family stuff going on. So Monti had an edge on the competition because he knew the track like the back of his hand. He had finished first in qualifying, but he still fell short of gold. And Monti said later that it was both his sled and his driving were just no good, and that's why they got silver. that said his driving must have been pretty decent because the Swiss pair of Max Angst and Harry Warburton finished 6 seconds behind for the
Oh,
bronze.
it's so funny when we hear these older time differences where now it's like hundredths of a second,
Yeah, well, we'll
and
get
back
there.
in the
There,
day,
the
it's so
difference
big.
the difference between bronze and fourth was 0.26 seconds, and the difference between sixth and eighth was 0.05.
Oh, okay, there
So
we go.
still, you still had some closeness in there. Um, who had the sled that finished in fourth just off the podium? So you and I are both familiar with royalty in bobsled because Prince Albert of Monaco was
Yes.
a bobsledder when we were getting into the Olympics.
Oh,
And
oh, royalty in the Olympics. Lay it on me.
well, Cortina, 1956, had its own aristocrat, the Marquis de Portago, who drove Spain to a fourth place finish. So the Marquis was a multi-sport talent, but 1956 was his only Olympics. Fourth was his best finish. He finished ninth in the four-man. Spoiler alert. The Marquis was notably a speed demon who also raced Formula One cars.
Kind of goes together.
Yes. And in 1957, he decided to race the Mille Miglia, a 1,000-mile race from Brescia to Rome and back. And when he and his driving companion Nelson got to Guidizzolo, a tire popped, Marquis lost control of the car, crashed into a telephone pole, car went flying, spectators couldn't get out of the way. 9 people killed, 5 of those were children.
Oh,
20 others injured. Both the Marquis and Nelson died. Car was smashed to pieces. And this tragedy shut that race down. And
wow.
that was it for the Mille Miglia. It's since been revived as a classic car race, but it's definitely not like we're getting to someplace as fast as possible. This is
Right, it's a different
classic
show.
cars going through town. So, very sad note to that story of somebody who did make a mark in the Olympics. But let's go back to bobsled. The four-man race, completely different story. So the gold medalist from the two-man, Della Costa, did not compete in the four-man. So now we have a lot more unpredictability here going on. The heavier sleds were also tougher on the track, and the fourth run in particular was extremely difficult for organizers to pull off. So on the first day of competition, it's all Switzerland. Switzerland 2, very fast first run, led the field, followed by hometown hero Eugenio Monti in Italy, sled Italy 2, and then
Go Monty.
USA 1, piloted by Art Tyler, who had a PhD in physics and worked at Eastman Kodak, was in third.
Well, there you go. Now, there's a nice melding of your work life and your sport life.
Right. Switzerland 1 was in fourth. This sled was driven by Franz Kappus, who was a 46-year-old competing in his 33rd Olympics. On his sled was brakeman Heinrich Angst, competing in his second and final Olympics. The name Angst might be familiar from earlier in the story. Heinrich was the brother of Swiss 2 pilot and medalist Max, and the brothers were butchers who started the Angst Meat Company that is still in existence today. There is a third Angst sibling, Willi, who was an Olympic wrestler at Berlin 1936 and London 1948.
Okay, they take things very seriously.
So Heinrich, or Hyrie, as his nickname was, he placed 7th in the two-man. Obviously wanted to be better in the four-man. Second run, Monti from Italy has some issues, drops to 4th. Swiss 1 and 2 leads the field. USA is still in 3rd. Overnight, the temperature drops to minus 16 degrees Celsius. And that really changed the course. The water system also froze. So this meant any repairs they had planned to do to fix up the course after day 1 had to be done without water.
How do you make ice with no water?
They must have dug stuff out of someplace else. I mean, we're also dealing with like not a ton of snow. So they may
Right,
have
like
trucked in stuff from someplace.
wow.
I mean, we're still talking about a bobsled run that's not far out of town.
Right.
Even though the town is smaller at this point, I bet it's a little more, you know, the town got built up around the run,
Right, right.
but, you still gotta truck some stuff in. So the 4th run was especially difficult for later running sleds because at this point, the track has holes in it. So Franz Campos, Eugenio Monti, and Art Tyler were able to adjust, but Max Angst and Swiss 2 had 2 tough runs. He had the 5th and 9th fastest times, respectively. He fell to 4th, almost 2 full seconds off the podium. Swiss 1 won the gold pretty handily. After their difficult first run, they really got it together and won the last 3. And they were almost a second and a half faster than Italy 2, which got the silver. And the difference between silver and bronze was just 0.29 seconds, with USA 1 losing. So
Oh.
for the USA, this bronze medal was its last medal in the 4-man until 2002. So
Yeah.
of the 12 men who stood on the podium in the 4-man, only 2 went on to compete at another Olympics. And that could have been in part because there was no bobsled in 1960, because they didn't want to build one that was too expensive. So athletes had to wait until 1964 for their chance to go back to the Olympics. One of those 2 was American Jim Lammy, whose father was a really great speed skater at the beginning of the century, and the other was Italian legend Eugenio Monti. And,
Go Monty.
I know. He was beloved in the bobsled community, although he had a reputation for dodging journalists. So he competed in a couple more games. He got the cycle, so he got gold, silver, and bronze, full set, which you like,
I
for
love that.
both the 2-man and the 4-man, and he did it identically. So he got the silvers in 56, the bronzes in 64, and the golds in 68.
Oh, wow.
And he
That's
got
even
the
better that his sets match.
right? It's really funky how that worked out. And he was 40 years old in 68 when he finally got gold. And if 1960 had had bobsled, he would have medaled there too. So Monty is particularly known for his acts of fair play. This was big in 1964. He helped repair the Canadian 4-man sled, which had sustained a broken axle. Canadians got gold. Then Monty also loaned the British 2-man sled a bolt from his own sled, and the Brits took gold. And Monty later said, he's like, they didn't win the gold because I helped them. They won the gold because they happened to be better drivers that day. And that was really seen as the epitome of sportsmanship. And he didn't want to win because they had broken sleds and he could have helped them. He wanted to
Any
race
good
against the
athlete
best.
wants their competitors to be at their best so that the best person on the day wins, not because you lost a bolt.
Yes.
That's just ridiculous.
So really beloved by the community. The Cortina bobsled track is now named for him. Even the old version of the Cortina track that was torn down to make way for the 2026 track, that was named after him too. This past winter, Rai 1 TV station in Italy had a movie about him called Rosso Volante.
I love
It's
that
a
nickname.
shame that we did not know this existed and tried to parse through it. Sadly, in his older years, Eugenio Monti suffered from Parkinson's disease, and in 2003, he died by suicide.
Oh.
Also a bummer that we didn't know this, but during Milano Cortina, Al Pasetto Restaurant Pizzeria had a display of Monti's uniform, spikes, and Grenoble 1968 diploma, and a collection of torches. And that's a restaurant in Cortina. And we talked before about how Cortina did a lot of stuff and had so much 1956 memorabilia around, really celebrating that anniversary. But this was just another one of those touches that was there.
Very lovely.
So sources, we've got the Journal of Olympic History, Bud Greenspan's Frozen in Time, The Greatest Moments at the Winter Olympics, International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation, the official report of Cortina d'Ampezzo, 1956, Olympedia, the Olympics YouTube channel, Brian Pinelli, Reuters Connect, Australian Broadcasting Company, Telenews Daily News Film, and the United States Olympic Committee.
That was fun.
So
Bobsled is
lots
always
of fun.
fun when we get to look at the
Yeah.
old stuff and you're just like, how much video did you watch just to entertain yourself as you were doing this?
Sadly, there's, like, not a ton, and I didn't get into the film yet to
Mm,
really break down, but it is interesting, like, trying to piece together the little tiny bits and rewatching it over and over just to see, like, "Okay, so how are they getting into the sleds this time?" Or, "I read about the sled being different," and, like, the Podar sleds were a little flatter on top and wider, it seemed like, than other sleds, but I could not tell the difference on how fast they were going, of course. I kinda really wanted to see the sleds with try to navigate these tracks that have holes in them, to be quite honest. That had to be wild to deal with. I mean, you
and
would
that
never get that
nobody
today.
and that nobody did a serious, nobody had a serious crash with that
Yeah.
kind of condition.
Well, I wonder how the narrower tracks
Mm,
were for safety, because 'cause we've said that when we talked about why they needed to build the 2026 track, and Chris Fote told us, "Yeah, the sleds today's sleds can't get down these old tracks." And so I wonder if having a narrow track with a more open bobsled was just as safe as having a big track
mm,
today. Because I don't know how fast they were going either. I don't really have speed predictions. We just get times.
right. And you have to sit there and do the math.
Right.
That's calculus above our grade level.
You got that right. So, all right. So next time we'll be talking cross country skiing and keeping it real with Cortina 1956. Thank you so much for listening.
And until next time, keep the flame alive.